What's going on, everybody? You're listening to Point2Point NHL Recap Show, Season 3, Episode 43. I'm Pascal Pryor, joined by Mark Havilak. Today we got some more off-season deep dives. We're going to be going through the Eastern Conference playoff teams that lost in the first round. So that would be the Ottawa Senators, the Boston Bruins, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Tampa Bay Lightning. So stay tuned for the deep dives of those teams later this podcast. Before we get into all of that, though, Marky, what's going on with you?
Nothing much, man. I feel like at this point, like I'm just kind of dying for hockey to be back right now. The only thing I'm looking forward to is like fantasy baseball playoffs that's
Yeah.
coming up here in a couple weeks. I was at my cottage this past weekend. It was kind of not a great experience. Lost power on Saturday for like 5 hours. Just like wasn't really like a good cottagey feel. You know what I mean? Like sometimes like when you're like, I don't know if you feel the same way if you're in Calgary. I know you don't go there in the summer a whole lot, but it was like sometimes like it's nice, you feel like you're like living back in the day. You just like throw on some candles, like have some flashlights. But like after a couple hours of that, I'm just like, fuck, man. Like I'm
Yeah.
up here to have a vacation and it's just like windy, like no internet, no power. So honestly, man, like I didn't really have the greatest weekend overall. I ended up coming home early just because I didn't want to work from there and risk the no power. But besides that, man, not too much going on with me. How about you?
Not too much going on with me. I'm kind of having the same feeling of like ready for hockey to be back. I will say it's a little bit better than the last couple weeks, right? Like the last couple weeks, there was nothing going on. F1 was in their summer break, right? Like football hadn't started up. You really just had baseball, and it's kind of mid-season where it's not overly entertaining. So this week's been a lot better, right? Like you had F1, they came out of their summer break. The EPL, so for the football fans out there, that started back up, right? And then you also got preseason football. So it's like you can see that these sports are starting back up or close to starting back up, and it's almost like, oh man, we're just around the corner. I will say the one thing that was a bit depressing though is I was driving down the street the other day to go to work, and I like look over and I'm like, man, like some of the there was like one tree on my road where it's like some of the leaves were starting to fall, and like the leaves had almost like changed colors. I was like, oh man, like I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. You know what I mean? Like I do like
Ma-
winter, but
It's
fuck.
funny that you mentioned that because when I was driving home last night from my cottage, like obviously August, you see a lot of like the back to school stuff, right? Like at this
Yeah,
point, like August 24th, we're recording this, like you kind of expect it if you're watching live TV and commercials. Dude, like there was a lot of like houses, like and or cottages that like already had, like Halloween shit set up. Like I'm like, dude, like
that's
we're like 2.5 months away.
that's
Like
crazy.
that seems a little bit like aggressive if you ask me. I don't know if I just like randomly drove by like some like die hard like Halloween fans, but like there was about 10, like I would say like 10 different houses. And I mean it's a 2.5 hour drive, so I mean I'm passing by a lot, but still, like I don't think I've ever, like I don't go to my cottage after Labor Day really that much.
Yeah,
Like our family, we just don't really go up there much. Like it's kind of cold, like you know what I mean. Like it's not as enjoyable as the summer. I don't know if I've ever seen like Halloween shit up in any other year. So I don't know if people are just like kind of pre-planning really far into the future this year. But that was one thing that surprised me a lot.
we're almost 2 months out from Halloween. I feel like that's just insanity. Even if you
Yeah.
love Halloween, it's your like favorite day of the year. It's like, man, like 2 months out,
Like, are people
little
more
little
hyped this year? Because
questionable.
it's on, I think it's on a Saturday night. So, I mean, like, there's going to be like probably even more trick or treaters and shit than there is usual. But I'm just still like, this is like a really aggressive, in my opinion.
Can't wait until they get out the Christmas decorations in 2 weeks. Let's get into the deep dives for today, though. The first team up, it's the Ottawa Senators. Kind of had a lot of controversy over the offseason with them and during the regular season as well. Of course, this is a team that their first round pick this season, it got pushed all the way back to the very last pick in the first round just due to the whole everything that happened with the trade a couple years ago, and then also they lost their captain Brady Tkachuk. Mark, can you take me through some of these prospects though?
Yeah, 100%. The guy they took in the first round this year, I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't really know much about him when they picked him. I've watched a little bit of his tape since. His name's Jonas Lagerberg Hohen. He was actually like injured most of the year last year, but he's got like an elite shot for an 18-year-old, a guy that Ottawa was really high on. I've seen some other scouts were super high on him as well. I mean, if he pans out, I mean, Ottawa does lack some scoring, I think, sometimes, in my opinion. They're obviously a team that has talent and can score goals. But if a guy like this can pan out, like probably like a healthy season next year, I see that he is going to be playing in the SHL. You never know a development path, right? Like sometimes I feel like there's names where you see them go in the draft at like a pretty high place and you're just like, what the heck are they doing? But they end up turning out
Yeah.
okay. Like even Zarovsky last year, I was kind of like, why the hell are we picking this guy early in the second round? Montreal, I'm talking for. And it seems like now that he's probably going to be like a top 15 player from the draft, like the way that he's been developing. So I wasn't optimistic about that pick for Ottawa at first, but it seems like there's a lot of people that are super high on him and he can definitely score some goals. That 32nd overall pick you were mentioning, they took Jackson Cover, who plays for London in the OHL. I watched him play about 5 times live last year. He's a very fascinating player. He's very skilled. He can skate really well. He didn't really put up like great numbers in the OHL last year, but I think that as the year went on, he got better and better. And I think that it probably will take him a couple years to develop to play within pro hockey. But I think if he spends another year in London, has a big year, it could do really good for him. I don't know if you know about him either. He actually never played ice hockey until he was 12 years old. I
Yeah.
think he's from, I could be totally off on this. He's from somewhere like Costa Rica. I could be so off. And he only played roller hockey growing up. And then he ended up playing double A and then he went to triple A and then he's a first round pick to the NHL a couple years later. So kind of a fascinating player, late bloomer, I guess you can say as well. So that's another reason to be optimistic about like a guy that necessarily hasn't had a great development path, I would say, so far. Taking a look at a couple other guys in the 2025 draft in the first round, they took Logan Hensler, defenseman from Wisconsin. He's more of like a two-way defenseman. He can definitely put up some offense, but I think for Ottawa as well, he kind of seems like a guy that could be like maybe like a solid Artem Zub replacement in the future, depending if Artem Zub's there or not. I don't really think they have necessarily the same size. Hensler honestly might even have more like offensive ability than Artem Zub, but I'm pretty optimistic that Logan Hensler like could be a top 4 defenseman in the future. Now, the one guy I wanted to talk to you about a little bit, because I actually really feel like it's like a make or break season to make the NHL for Tyler Boucher.
Yeah.
Obviously, that pick at the time at 10th overall was a huge surprise. Like a lot of people didn't have him even within the first round of the NHL draft. And in 2021, he went 10th overall. I mean, the offense at the AHL level, I guess you could say, is getting a little bit better. It still isn't great overall. He's kind of still hovering around like half a point a game. But I will say that he's kind of more developed into being like a gritty player that will probably it could fill in a bottom 6. But would you agree in the sense that you would say it's kind of like if he doesn't make it this year with Ottawa, like it's probably not going to be much of an NHL path for him in the future?
Yeah, I'd agree with you for sure. Just considering that he's been in the AHL for a little bit now, and as you mentioned, like his numbers are a bit better, but his numbers for a 10th overall pick, his numbers are still pretty underwhelming, right? Like I think it's at the point with him where if he's not getting a real shot with Ottawa this season, it's like it's going to be hard even to give him real opportunities in the AHL because you're going to have other players there in the AHL that you're going to want to grow and develop, right? So I'd say it's for sure a make or break season for him.
Yeah, I think he might get an opportunity at some point to play. Like I feel like Ottawa's lineup, like it probably is like pretty set for the most part, but I would say like even like their 13th, 14th forward, like could definitely be up for grabs. Like you never know if there's an injury and he gets an opportunity
Yeah.
at some point, gets called up and doesn't get sent back down. Before we move on, I just wanted to mention 2 of their goalie prospects. The first one is Lucas Beckman. They took in the 4th round last year. It was a pretty solid pick, honestly. He split some time between Chicoutimi last year, and I forget what other QMJHL team he was on, but he had a pretty good numbers, and Chicoutimi was a really good team last year. He got invited to Canada's World Junior Camp this year. I think there's a possibility he could make it as one of their 3 goalies. I do really think that Jack Ivankovic is going to be the starting goalie for Canada this year at the World Juniors, though. Now, Beckman didn't really have a great World Junior Camp in the summer. Honestly, I don't think a lot of guys did overall, but I would anticipate him as being like a pretty solid goalie prospect. He moves pretty well. He's got some good size to him. I don't really know if he's going to be a starting goalie in the future, but I do kind of envision some sort of an NHL path. And then the other guy is actually a guy they didn't draft, was Jackson Parsons, one guy we're familiar with from Kitchener in the OHL. He didn't really get a huge shot with Belleville last year. I mean, they had a whole goalie controversy with like Marilainen being up and down. Mad Sogard was another goalie prospect that was pretty highly touted, but I mean, he just never really figured out in the NHL. So Parsons, he had like elite numbers in the ECHL, which I don't think is still anything to shy away about. Like, there's a lot of goalies that play in the NHL that spend time in the ECHL, like Logan Thompson. Yep. Like, honestly, I wonder about Jackson Parsons even having, I could be overselling this in accordance to like upside, but I just kind of look at like Jet Greaves, like a guy that's undrafted, gets signed after playing in the OHL, kind of carving out his path and making a career for himself. So like, I'm pretty optimistic that Jackson Parsons can continue to develop, and maybe by the time he's 24, 25, get some sort of a shot in the NHL. I don't really know exactly what the upside is at this point, but I really liked him when he was in Kitchener. Like, even though Christian Kirsch won the OHL championship this year, like, I still feel like Jackson Parsons is one of the best goalies that Kitchener has had in quite some time, especially even in his overage years. So I really see him having some sort of an NHL career in the future.
Yeah, and you mentioned the whole ECHL thing with him too. Like, it's getting more and more common now that goalies spend time in the ECHL, right? Like, you mentioned Logan Thompson. It's like Sebastian Cossa, even, who was a first-round pick, spent time in the ECHL, right? And we look at it, we were talking about him last episode, and we're both thinking he could have a pretty big season for Utah, right? So goalies playing the ECHL, like, I really don't think anything about that, just because I'd rather have a goalie go down to the ECHL and play majority of games than be in the AHL and not really get any opportunity to grow, right?
Especially like if you're being like, say you're kind of, because I would say with him before they signed Reimer, like he was still kind of 4th, 5th in the pecking order. You know what I mean? For Ottawa, like with Marilainen and Sogard. So it's like, would you prefer him just being the 3rd goalie in the AHL and just being a practice guy and barely playing, or actually going and getting reps and playing in the ECHL? Like, you got to remember that there's only 4 spots above you, right? Even if you're in the ECHL, it's not like being a player. Like, it's a lot different.
Yeah.
So it's like, you kind of got to take the opportunity when you get it. Like, even look like with you guys, with Dustin Wolf, it's like, could he have played in the NHL sooner? Like, maybe, like we think probably, but there's also only 2 spots in the NHL to play, right? So it's like, you want to make sure that he's actually playing games and developing. So I didn't really have a problem with him being in the ECHL next year. I think he's proven enough, especially even with Sogard gone now, that he could play in the AHL next year.
Yeah, I really do like Jackson Parsons as well as a goalie prospect, but it's exactly as you mentioned. Like, I don't know what his true upside is right now, and I think maybe in a couple of years, or
I think they probably don't know either, right? Like, I think they just see a guy who's been getting better and better every single year, and it's kind of worth just signing him to an ELC and seeing how it plays out, right? So, and I think that's okay as well. Like I said, like, they've got Beckman, they've got Marilainen, like Allmark's there for a couple more years. Like, it's okay to take a risk on a guy like this, because at worst, you just don't qualify him when his contract's done if you really just don't like the way he's developing.
I want to move on and look over at their lineup going into next season now. Of course, the big news from them was trading Brady Tkachuk, their captain, for the 9th overall pick in this year's draft. Of course, they go and flip that pick, and they bring in William Eklund. Mark, starting off on that, how did you feel about that kind of sequence of trades there?
Yeah, it was definitely strategic the way it played out. Like, when they ended up making the Tkachuk trade, like, I think a lot of us felt like they weren't going to kind of take a step back and rebuild, considering the positivity around, I would say, the group overall. I know there was a lot of noise last year, but I mean more in the grand scheme of things of, they went through this rebuild. Maybe it even lasted a year or 2 longer than they would have hoped. They finally got into the playoffs. Obviously, these 2 playoff runs were not super optimistic. You know what I mean? Like, they only won 2 games in the 2 playoff rounds, but they still got there, and they had a lot of struggles getting there for quite some time. Now they got a lot of assets back for Brady Tkachuk, 100%, like the 3 first-round picks, second-round pick. That 9th overall pick gets flipped for William Eklund. They ended up drafting that Jonas Lager, I can't even say his name, Lagerberg guy with the 25th overall pick. They still have the other first-round pick as well. I believe it's a 2029 first, which will become a 2030 first if it's within the top 10. I mean, if you're looking at it value-wise, I mean, time will tell with this prospect and even that 2030 pick. I think it was a pretty nice and strategic move. I don't know if Eklund is necessarily worth the 9th overall pick, but I don't know if it's that like ludicrous of a trade. Like I don't think it's something where I think you'd be kicking yourselves. They probably felt like it was the right move to get a proven NHLer like on a really solid contract as well, like making $5.6 million. Like he was set to be an RFA this summer, but signed a year early. Like you'd think that even if he wanted a bridge deal this year and hadn't signed already, like I'd probably think it'd be more than 5.6 million, to be honest, considering he's coming off like a 55-point season or 2 straight 55-point seasons. When you're looking at their roster up and down, like, yeah, it doesn't look as great for sure. I think there's still definitely some holes that could be filled for sure. But I also think this is a team that was actually a pretty good team last year for the most part. Like I really felt like most of the first half of the season that goaltending really let them down. Like they had like historically bad goaltending. Like they were one of the better defensive teams in the NHL. Their special teams at times wasn't great. Like their penalty kill is something that they're definitely going to have to figure out. I still really like their center depth overall with Stützle, Cousins, Pinto. I think that's one of the 3 best centers, like top 3 centers in the league in accordance to like depth overall. But it's going to be a hard division this year, dude. Like they're going to have to prove again that they're this good. Hopefully they can get good goaltending, but yeah, I don't love the roster overall, but I still think they're a good team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I still think they're a good team, but they're just in a stacked division, so it's kind of hard to compare them against the rest of the division, right? When you got monsters like Montreal or Florida, right? I look at this team and as you said, the center depth I really do like. The wingers, it does scare me a little bit, especially the middle 6 wingers. Like I don't know if they got enough scoring in there. And then the other thing too is bringing in Sam Ersson this offseason. I do not like that move whatsoever. You mentioned that they had goaltending issues and goaltending was kind of what held them back last season. It's like, yeah, you're probably betting that Linus Ullmark isn't going to have another season that he did last year, right? But if he does, then you're leaning heavily on Sam Ersson, and I just don't think that's enough to get you in the playoffs if it comes down to that, right? And I just don't really get the move there too much for bringing him in. I would have liked to see maybe a different goaltender, even something like Sebastian Cossa or Devin Levi, right? Like those 2 moves, it wasn't a whole lot that you had to give up for those guys, and Ottawa definitely had the assets to go and pull something like that off, but they didn't. So it is going to be interesting to see if what happened last year kind of happens again, where goaltending is the one thing that holds them back. Like, would you agree with that or no?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a huge question mark because I think that if the same thing happens this season, I don't know if it's going to be as easy as a path for them to get back in it like they did last year. Like, I think a lot of people felt like they were down and out, and I didn't really think they were down and out because I was like, even if this goaltending becomes league average, like they're going to win a lot of hockey games. And they were pretty good down the stretch, like for the most part near the end of the season. Like I thought they definitely had a better fighting chance against Carolina. Right. Because when Ottawa's on their game, I don't think they're a really easy team to play against. And I still think even though they got swept, like they gave Carolina a pretty decent series. Like 2 of those games went to overtime. Like they never fully blew out Ottawa at all. So I do agree. I don't love the Sam Ersson move overall. I would honestly argue that he's been one of the worst goalies in the NHL over the past 3 seasons.
Yep.
I really wonder if they brought him in because they see that he's still young and has like there's obviously still some upside there because he is young. The Swedish connection with Linus Ullmark as well. Like I'm not too sure if they have any sort of a previous relationship. Because the one thing too is I wonder if they're looking at it as like Ullmark was pretty good when Forsberg was his partner, right? And they had some sort of a connection before Ottawa. So I wonder if they think they could rejuvenate him that way. I know I've said his name multiple times throughout the summer. Like, I would have preferred they just went out and signed Connor Ingram, dude. Like, because even if something happens to Linus Ullmark, like, you know that Connor Ingram's a guy, like, Is he a starting goal in the NHL? I don't think so. But I think he's shown that he's capable of at least being like a 1B. And it's like
Yeah.
the one thing with Allmark, it's like, yeah, last season was a disaster, but for him, for the most part, I thought he was great in the playoffs, to be honest with you. Like, he had like a 933 save percentage and lost all 4 games. But I would say before last season, like, he's been one of the more consistent goalies in the NHL. Like, he's putting up like a 908 plus save percentage in 4 or 5 straight seasons. Like, he's a pretty solid goalie for the most part. But the one downfall on him during that stretch is he doesn't play 60 games. Like, he gets hurt. Like, you know what I mean? So I felt like a guy that, like Connor Ingram, maybe, that you could rely on to play 30, 35 games if you have to, probably would have been a better option than Sam Harrison.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Connor Ingram, like, he's proven that he can do that. Where Sam Harrison, like, he hasn't really proven anything so far in his career. And
Would he
yeah,
really have
maybe
been that more expensive than 2.2 that they gave Sam Harrison? Like,
probably
maybe say
not.
they signed him July 1. Like would it have been that crazy to say like he would have made like a 3x3 or like 3 million for 2 years? Like, I don't think Connor Ingram was realistically getting much more than that.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next team, I want to ask you a couple questions, Mark. My first question is, who's going to lead this team in points next season?
Honestly, I think Stutzel. I definitely see Stutzel probably even upping his point total from last year, getting maybe somewhere close to 90 points. I actually think him and William Eklund could be a really fascinating duo. They both play with a lot of pace and skill. And I think Stutzel, like, yeah, he had the one season where he like took off. I think he had like 91 points or whatever it was, but he's really rounded his game out. Like, he's a
Yeah,
lot
he
more
has.
physical. He's a lot better defensively as well. Like, I think people aren't talking about him as much as when he put up those high numbers, just because he's rounded out his game a lot more. But I still think there is, like, I guess you can say, another level offensively than what we've seen maybe the last 2 seasons. And I still think he's going to be consistently over a point per game player in his career.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be Stutzel. I think that if it's not Stutzel, that means that he likely missed a significant amount of time based on how this team looks. Like, it's going to be Stutzel that leads them in points next season. Next question for you, Mark, is who do you think is going to be the breakout player of the season for the Ottawa Senators?
Honestly, dude, like, one guy I still think has a little bit more to give, especially offensively, could be Ridley Gregg. I think that he's a pretty physical player overall. First round pick a couple years ago. I don't think the offense has necessarily like been there consistently throughout his career. Last couple of years, he's hovering around like mid 30s in points. Like, I wonder if he's a guy, maybe even if it's not consistently, like, you get him up to like 50 points, right? Like, he's a pretty versatile player. He can play center, he can play the wing. He's not bad defensively either for the most part, but he's one of their guys that's still young, I would say, that I've maybe expected a little bit more out of offensively throughout his career. And I think there are times where you see that he can be that player offensively. And I'm really wondering if maybe he gets more of an elevated role this year, right? Like, you're saying the wings aren't that strong. And I kind of agree. Like, I think there's definitely some question marks. I don't think these players on the wings, like, we're looking at Fogle, Amadio, like Claude Giroux. I mean, he can play center, but they're pretty deep on center already. I'm sure he's just going to be a guy that takes a lot of faceoffs, but that plays the wing. But I think there's an opportunity for Ridley Gregg to move up the lineup if he plays well.
For me, my breakout player, I think it's going to be William Eklund. You mentioned earlier that him and Stutzel are both very fast players. I think they're going to play really well together on that first line here. And William Eklund, he hasn't cracked over 60 points once in his career. I could see if him and Stutzel are buzzing next season where William Eklund finishes in the like 65 to 70 point range. And I'm kind of hoping that he has that breakout too, because if Ottawa's going to have a big season next year, they're going to need William Eklund to kind of take another step in his game. Mark, looking at this prospect pool, what grade would you give it?
They definitely have a couple like intriguing prospects that I talked about earlier, but I think they're a team where a lot of their young guys have kind of taken steps to develop. Like, one guy I didn't mention earlier that I didn't really put on the prospect list that still is Carter Yakimchuk, just because I think he's going to make the NHL out of camp and potentially be on that third pair on the right side. He's a pretty intriguing prospect that could be a top 4 defenseman overall. if I'm looking at this dude, I think I'm going to give it like a C plus. Like, I don't think there's anything really like no number one defenseman, no surefire like first line forward, but you never know. Like if Cover turns out to be a top six forward, like Lagerberg, Hensler, and Yakimchuk be top four defensemen, like that's kind of what I'm envisioning right now.
Yeah.
I would say that's around like mid pack in the NHL, maybe even a little bit lower overall. So I think I'd give it like a C plus.
Yeah, I'm kind of hovering in between a C plus and a B minus. I think originally I was thinking I was going to give him a C plus, but that's also when I forgot that Carter Yakimchuk technically is still kind of in their prospect pool. I'm going to give him a B minus just off the fact that Carter Yakimchuk is still there. It's as you mentioned, like they don't have any sure doubt top players outside of Yakimchuk, but I do like a couple other players there. And for me, that Jackson Corver is arguably one of the most intriguing, just considering he's so new to hockey compared to like all these other prospects, right? It's like earlier you touched on how much he really developed this season in London. It's like for a guy who's only been playing hockey that long, that's first of all the fact that he's in the OHL is already super impressive, and then the fact that he's taking that many leaps in his draft year is even more impressive, right? So I'm excited to see what he can do. My last question for you, Mark, is overall offseason grade. What would you give him?
Yeah, they had a very strange offseason just because they were definitely put into an awkward position with the whole Kachuk thing, but they're still not trying. Well, they're getting good draft picks out of it and almost like flipping them. They had to be very strategic for sure. I'm still gonna give them a C minus. I don't love the offseason overall. I do like the kind of the Eklund swing they took here, but I don't love the way they utilize the rest of their cap space, to be quite honest with you. Like the Sam Ersson signing, I think it's kind of a waste of 2.2 million overall. Bringing back Claude Giroux for 2 million, I think that's pretty solid. I'm going to be honest, I do not get the Andre Burakovsky ad. I don't love taking his 5.5 million overall. I really felt like last year this team was in need of another top six scorer, and they just did not address that whatsoever. I still think the D-core is pretty underrated and really solid, especially if Carter Yakimchuk gets in there. Like Jake Sanderson's a stud. Jordan Spence had a really good season. He got a pretty good contract, which he deserves 100% as well. So I don't know if they're a playoff team right now because I just don't know if they did enough in my eyes to make themselves better.
Yeah, for me, I have them kind of as a bubble team right now in the playoffs. I'm gonna give them, I think, probably a C plus grade based on their offseason. I think for the card that or the hand that they were dealt in Brady Tkachuk asking for a trade out of Ottawa, like I didn't have too many issues there with that return and going out and swinging that to get Eklund, where it's like you're not making the ninth overall pick and obviously taking this significant step back. But I do agree with you in the fact that there are some contracts there that they handed out that I'm not the biggest fan of, especially that Sam Ersson one. The one contract that I do really enjoy is the Claude Giroux one, just because there was a lot of rumors that he might be going back to Philly this offseason, right? And then all of a sudden he's signing with Ottawa. And when those rumors were out, I was like, oh man, if they lose Claude Giroux, that's going to be really ugly for the Ottawa Senators. So I'm going to give them a C plus. Mark, before we move on to the next team, I know you're going to have some questions loaded up for me. So why don't you hit me with them?
Yeah, we touched on him a little bit earlier, but do you think that Linus Ullmark is going to continue his play from the playoffs last year and like have a rebound season this year?
I think he will have a rebound season. He had a good playoffs, as you mentioned. The other thing, too, is he's always been consistent. Like last year was the first time really in a while where it's like, oh man, like he has not been good. And the other thing too is, of course, like there was a lot of rumors around the locker room and what was going on there. And like I'm not really going to touch on that, but the one thing we do know is that that locker room was clearly not a great place to be in at points last season, right? So I think now that you're not going to have that going into next season, I do think that is going to help Linus Allmark a lot and kind of finding his game.
Yeah, I still think he's a really solid goalie who's really talented. I
Yeah.
do expect him to have a rebound season this year. One guy that is up for contract next summer is Drake Batherson. So my question is, Do you think he's going to re-sign with the Senators? And if he does, give me money in term.
It is tough because based off the way guys are signing nowadays, it could be something insane. Um,
He's coming off a very like good contract right now too. That's very team friendly. Like he makes under
yeah,
$5 million. So I'm anticipating that he's going to want some sort of a payday here.
I'm gonna say that he is gonna re-sign with Ottawa just because if you're the Ottawa Senators looking at it, your highest paid player right now is Tim Stützle at 8.3, right? It's like they don't have any massive contracts where it's like, oh man, they're gonna have a tough time kind of affording Batherson. And the other thing too is if you lose Drake Batherson for nothing as a UFA, you're gonna be taking a massive step back. Now for terms of the contract, I'm gonna say I'm gonna say it's gonna be a 7 year deal at 8.5.
Wow.
What number did you have in your head? I want to hear
I'm
that.
going to be completely honest with you, dude. I think he's signing a 7 year deal at 10.75. I think he's looking right at the Alex Tuck and the Adrian Kempe contract because he's got similar numbers to them. And I think with the cap going up, he's going to, I don't think there's a chance that he's not getting a double digit AAV, is what I'll say.
Yeah, it is tough because
I think if he was going to make $8.5 million, that contract would be signed already.
yeah, I might be lowballing it. I guess in my mind, I'm just considering that the long term might be better to go lower with him, right? Because he is 28, where it's like if you go a short term deal for a higher AAV, it could maybe not work out there on the bat, like once you got to resign. So
He's coming
it's
off a 33 goal season, 71 points, career high. I think he's going to have a big season overall. Maybe it won't be closer to 11 million to what I'm saying, but I'm going to be honest right now. I would be shocked if he's not getting at least $10 million a year.
yeah, I probably am a bit low. I'm gonna change to 9.5.
Okay. I still think that would honestly be pretty team friendly as
Yeah.
well. Like he's a really solid player. He's pretty physical at times as well. I think he's been pretty clutch. Like even last year, like how many goals did they score in that series? Dude, he had 3 of them. Like he was a point per game player in that series against Carolina last year. Meanwhile, they got swept. So I think he's an underrated player. If he becomes available on the market, a lot of teams are going to be calling for him because he's definitely a top 6 forward, and I think he's going to get a pretty big payday this year. My last question for you, Brady Tkachuk, obviously their captain, he's getting traded, or he got traded, excuse me. Who will be Ottawa's next captain, and do you think that captain will be named this season?
No, I don't think they name a captain this season, but I think their next captain is going to be Jake Sanderson.
Does the American factor worry you at all for him?
Maybe a little bit, but I also think that you can't be basing your captain off of the fact that, oh, he's American, so he doesn't deserve it. Right? It's like, let's say Jake Sanderson is given the captaincy and all of a sudden he leaves again. Like, yeah, that's going to suck, but I don't think you can be looking at it where it's like, oh, he's an American playing in a Canadian market. We
Then
can't give him the
you just don't
captaincy.
draft Americans high anymore if you're Ottawa. Like that's
Yeah.
literally the route you're probably just gonna have to
Yeah.
take.
The one guy,
He'd be a good captain, 100%. The only other guy I'm thinking of too is Stutzel.
I was kind of wondering about Shabbat because he's been there for a while, but him having 2 years left on his deal, I think maybe you try to wait a year and then name a captain because then you can kind of pull the excuse that, oh, he has 1 year left on his deal, right? Because he has been there a long time, Thomas Chabot. And
Yeah, he's been committed to there. Like I think he's a
yeah,
Gatineau guy too, so he's literally right on the border of Quebec and Ottawa. Honestly, it would be kind of sick. I don't know if you agree if they did wait the year and then next summer they gave him an extension and then named him the captain at the same time, just knowing that he is going to be there. Like maybe that's a possibility as well.
yeah,
Like I think Ottawa has some decent candidates to be a captain. And the other thing too, before we move on to the next team, like I don't think Ottawa's like dead in the water here. Like you think about back to like when John Tavares left the Islanders, obviously a little bit different of a situation with him kind of leaving in free agency. But the Islanders were good for the next couple of years after that. Like the couple conference finals appearances, lost in the second round. Like sometimes like when a big change like this happens, like
Yeah.
it could be good for the group, right? So I'm really curious about Ottawa this year and kind of how they handle all this, because they had a lot of noise surrounding their team last year. And if they can quiet that down and just play hockey, I think this team could be a playoff team again.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, like, even just looking at it, William Eklund, like, there's a possibility in 3 years you could be looking at it and saying William Eklund is a better player than Brady Tkachuk. And, like, before you quote me, I'm not saying that they are right now, but if William Eklund all of a sudden becomes a point per game player every season, it's like that kind of would make it a debate, right? And you still got assets on top of that for getting rid of Brady Tkachuk, right? So I think Ottawa definitely did a decent job just considering kind of what they were handed this offseason. Moving on to the next team, we got the Boston Bruins. Mark, this is a team that has a couple interesting prospects. Can you take me through them?
Yeah, I feel like Boston's another pretty fascinating team for the most part. And the one thing I will say is I was kind of gunning for Don Sweeney's job for a couple years, and I think he's done a pretty good
Who's number
job
one on
at.
your hit list?
Well, I don't think it was very like I think it was pretty like well deserved for a stretch though, right? Like it felt
Yeah,
like the moves that or the lack of moves he made in 2015 in that draft when he had 3 straight picks and took DeBrusque and then I think it was Senishin and Zaboral, like, and when Kyle Connor sitting there, Thomas Chabot, Matt Barzell, right? Like, I felt like that really actually set the Bruins back when you're looking at it 6, 7 years later, right? And the quality of players those guys became. But with some of these draft picks and even trades, like, he's definitely replenished the prospect pool somewhat. Like, their number one prospect right now is James Haggins. Had a little bit of a cup of coffee in the NHL last year. Really solid second year at Boston College. Didn't really put up many goals the first year, but kind of turned himself into more of a goal scorer that's also a really good playmaker. The only thing with him is he is a little bit undersized, but he's got like a really solid frame still. I think there's a possibility in the future he could become a lower end number one center. I don't think he's going to get that opportunity. Maybe he will at some points this year to like maybe play with David Pastrnak and JJ Peterka, but I don't really anticipate that he's going to have that full season workload there. But I think he's a very skilled player, very dynamic. I think that he is going to be like a 70-point player in the future for the Boston Bruins. I don't know how long that'll take necessarily. A couple other guys that we're looking at here. Dean Letourneau was a first-round pick for them a couple years ago. They drafted him with the first-round pick they got from Ottawa in the Linus Ullmark trade. He had a disaster of a season the year before at Boston College. I don't think he scored a goal in 30 games. But
that's tough.
it's also like some of these guys don't necessarily go to the NCAA right after they're drafted as well. Like he didn't have a great role with Boston College. That definitely limited him a lot. But then he comes back this year, 22 goals in 36 games. He's over a point per game player. He's just a beast at 6'7", 229 pounds. He could be a top six forward in the future for sure. I kind of envision him at least as being like a middle six power forward that can put up some pretty good secondary scoring. I still think because of his size, like maybe another year in like I think he's probably going to spend this year at Boston College, probably sign at the end of the year, then still might need another year in the AHL before he becomes a full-time NHLer, I would say, because with some of these bigger guys too, they're kind of still developing into their bodies as
Yeah.
well. One guy that I really like that they got, I believe they got him in the Charlie Coyle trade, is Will Zellers. Colorado picked him in the third round in 2024. I love this pick when it happened. In his draft year, I believe he led the USHL in goals. And even at North Dakota, like he's hovering around half a goal a game. I really think he's going to be like a solid middle six scoring forward. And I think that was a really nice ad from, I don't know if I said Don Maloney. I think I meant to say Don Sweeney. No, one guy, it's a little bit different than we talked about with Tyler Boucher, but like, how do you feel about Matt Poitras at this point? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like he got rushed to the NHL and it was like he was good for a bit. His AHL numbers are still pretty good, but I've heard rumors that they're going to trade him in a package to get a top six forward. And then they went out and just traded the first to get Peterka. Like, I don't necessarily have him like making this opening night roster, to be honest. And I still think there are other options that like the 12 guys I have right now, like even if it's not these 12 guys, like if you take one of them out, like I don't have Matt Poitras as the next guy in line here, is what I'm trying to say. So, like, one, do you think he's got much of a future in Boston? And like, how do you even feel about what his upside is, regardless what team he's going to be on?
I think his upside at this point is probably a third line centerman. And when you look at Boston right now, it's tough because with what Fraser Minton came in and did last season, it's like I feel like he almost kind of took what Poitras was supposed to be, if you know what I mean, right? It's like Poitras came in at a young age, and to be honest, I don't think he should have been in the NHL right out of his draft or the year after, I think it was. If I'm Boston, I'd honestly be looking to move on from him. I just think he's a guy that teams would still be interested in bringing in. You could definitely upgrade your roster for now, which we know Boston wants to do. And you also have prospects in your system that I kind of prefer over him, right? Like you mentioned Will Zellers. Like I really do like Will Zellers, and like having him, Hagens, guys like that. It's just like the need for Poitras really isn't there right now. So I'd be moving on from him. What would you do with him though?
Yeah, I wouldn't just get rid of him for nothing, obviously, but I
Yeah,
would be definitely like exploring some sort of trade route, like even if it is for another young player that you feel might even have a little bit more upside than Patras. Like I could even see him going in some sort of like 1-for-1 swap. You know what I mean? For another young
yeah,
player
something
at
like
this
that.
point. I mean, even if he does become a third line center, I feel like for like where you selected him in the 50s, like it's still a pretty solid draft pick overall. But I still think they like kind of mismanaged the development of him, if that makes sense. Because I think that if you gave him a little bit more time, kind of developing within the OHL and even the AHL, that it probably could have worked out a little bit better. But he's still young. There's still time for him to kind of prove us wrong here. But I'm not really optimistic that he's going to play much in the NHL this year. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of Bruins fans are probably hoping that he could. Now, before we move on, like, I mean, player wise, that's really the only guys I want to talk about. The one guy I'm really interested in goaltending, and it seems like he's going to be their backup goalie this year, is Michael DiPietro. Um, he was pretty highly touted with the Canucks. It didn't really work out. I don't know if you remember, he got thrusted into that one game where they had goalie injuries and he let in like 7 goals on 20 shots. And
Yeah, it was an
it
ugly
felt like
start.
they just like never wanted to give him another chance to potentially play in the AHL. He ends up moving on. Now he's been, if not the best, one of the best goalies in the AHL over the past couple seasons. Like it's one of the reasons why they just let Brandon Bussey go, to be honest. Like you look at it and it's like, was it the right decision? Probably not. But it's like they also do have another guy that's playing at like an elite level in the AHL. I am very interested to see how he does this year. I think he is definitely ready for the NHL. I know Jeremy Swayman's going to get a lot of playing time here, but the one thing I will say is, especially if this team wants to get back in the playoffs this year, like it might be good to give Swayman a couple more games rest here and there. Like I don't have a lot of trust within Jonas Corposalo, to be honest with you, and I really think that Michael DiPietro is going to be the better option than Jonas Corposalo was.
Yeah, and with Michael DiPietro, like he's been good at every level he's played at, right? In the OHL, he was really good there on the Windsor Spitfires. They won I believe they won a Memorial Cup the year that
They hosted. They were
Windsor
a first
hosted.
round
Yep.
exit, and they beat Erie in the Memorial Cup Finals. I think it was probably like 2017 or somewhere around there, and he was
Yeah.
really good.
And then in the AHL, like as you mentioned, he's been one of the better goalies in the AHL over the past couple seasons. I definitely think this is somebody that is ready for the NHL and ready to take on a decent workload, right? Like it I'm not saying he's going to come in and he's going to be a 1B to Jeremy Swayman, but I think he is ready to be given that opportunity if it came down to that, or even if Jeremy Swayman ended up missing some time with injuries or something. I won't be
I
scared to
think
give.
he is the backup goalie. I
Yeah.
think the Corpusalo trade 100% put that opportunity out there for him, and I think too, like last year, even I was like, when they got rid of Bussy, like I knew that Bussy had upside. Like obviously I didn't expect what he did last year, but I was looking at it and I was like, man, they've got like 2 top 5 goalies in the AHL. Like they got to give one of these guys a shot. Like get rid of Corpusalo. Like who gives a shit, right? And they got rid of Bussy, and then DiPietro went through waivers last year, and I was like, he was one of the guys where I was like, I don't know if this guy should be going through waivers right now. You know what I mean? And he ended
Yeah.
up going through waivers. He was unbelievable in the AHL last year. And I think Boston's looking at this like, I don't think he's going to go through waivers again. And we have to give him a shot here. So I'm glad that he's finally getting an opportunity. I think the problem with him is, dude, is he's small. They don't like small. The NHL doesn't like small goalies. Like
Hate
he's
him.
only six
Hate him.
foot, right? But I think even playing behind a guy like Jeremy Swayman could help give Michael DiPietro even more confidence. And I think they've got a pretty solid goalie tandem heading into this season.
Let's move over and look at this lineup now for going into the season. The big move that they had was bringing JJ Peterka from Utah. They also bring in Connor Clifton on the back end and Henry Yokiharu. Couple moves there. Leaving the team, of course, you mentioned Corpusalo, he's gone. Victor Arvidsson, he's gone, and then Andrew Peak, he's gone off from the back end as well. So not a whole lot of movement. For me, the big one is JJ Peterka. I really like that they go out and they bring in another winger who can play in the top six. When you look at Boston, the one thing that I feel like fans have been saying for the last couple of years is Past has almost had too much of a workload up front there. We're bringing a guy like Peterka. Like, yeah, he's not a centerman, and there still is a lot of a need for a first line centerman. It's like bringing Peterka. He's going to help with taking that offensive load off of Pasternak. And let's not forget, this is a guy that scored, what, 40 goals, I believe it was, 2 years ago. He had one down season in Utah, and all of a
30,
sudden,
30.
30 goals, and all of a sudden, people are kind of a bit questioning him after a bad season in Utah. I really do like bringing him in for the Boston Bruins. Mark, what do you think about this lineup, though?
Yeah, like you said, like they didn't really do a whole lot.
Yeah,
But if you're kind of looking at who they subbed in and who they got rid of, I would say the roster is like a little bit better on paper overall. Now, I think this is a team that overachieved a little bit last year and relied a lot on Jeremy Swayman to help win them hockey games. And I'm not 100% convinced right now to think that could work, especially in this division, just because it's such a hard division. I mean, we've said it with every single team we've been through, right? But I like their roster better overall. They're giving some younger guys more of an opportunity, especially like down the middle as well. You bring in JJ Peterka, like he's got a solid contract. Like, not sure if he's going to be playing with Pasternak or if that's going to be Morgan Geeky still, but at least you bring in another guy that can kind of slide in your top six and put up some pretty good numbers. And they also had the luxury of like having that Leafs first round pick. They didn't end up using that pick necessarily to go out and trade. Like they still have the Leafs pick, but I mean, it gave them the opportunity of like, okay, we have another first round pick here. Like we're going to give up our own and then kind of sub that one out. You know what I mean? So they had the luxury of doing that. He signed to a pretty good contract, I would say, overall. I still definitely have some question marks whether I think they are a playoff team at the end of the day. Like the one thing I do worry about a little bit with them is producing offense from the back end. Like Charlie
yeah.
McAvoy had a great season last year, 100%. But I would say there were spurts of that where I was like, I feel like McAvoy's on like a different offensive level right now than I've ever seen him. Because you look at Charlie McAvoy, it's like he's a very good two-way defenseman who can put up 50 points, but it was almost spurts where he was like a point per game defenseman, right? I don't know if he is going to do that again, right? So I wonder if Mason Lowry could take a step this year and kind of maybe at points run that power play. I don't know if that's a little bit too much to ask, or even if they would take Charlie McAvoy off of that. But the offense still worries me a bit, even adding JJ Peterka, and obviously Pasternak's a world-class player. But I hope that they can find some offense where they're not just kind of relying on Jeremy Swayman to help win them hockey games like they did a lot last year.
Yeah, for me, this team, while they did maybe get a little bit better compared to last season, I still don't know if they're good enough to make the playoffs. And it's similar to what I was saying for Ottawa. For me, I just kind of have them as a bubble team right now in the Atlantic Division, right? Like maybe they could sneak in, maybe they're kind of couple points out and they're picking towards the end of the lottery there. But who really knows? I want to ask you the big questions now, Mark. Who's going to lead this team in points?
I think without a doubt, it's going to be David Pastrnak. Like I'd be surprised if he's not hitting the 100 point mark once again. I think he's got some more talent to play with within the top six and even up and down the lineup. Regardless if maybe times he's with Fraser Minton or James Hagens. Obviously, he played really good with Pavel Zacha, and Zacha had an underrated season last year. But I would be shocked if it's not David Pastrnak, even if he missed like 15 games. Like I
Yeah.
still think he could lead this team in scoring.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's going to be David Pastrnak, and I don't even have to think twice about that. I don't even really need to add anything onto what you said there. Next question is who's going to be their breakout player next season?
They've got some young players that are going to get opportunity, but I think especially just sitting there as their second line center right now, I still think there's other levels to Fraser Minton's game. Like he had a really solid rookie season last year, 35 points. I didn't really expect it that much for him to play that good within his first season. The one thing with him too, dude, that was super impressive, like he was really solid defensively.
Yeah,
Like
he is.
like he had like numbers where you'd be like, Jesus Christ, like he could be like top 20 in Selke votes right now. Like that's how good he was defensively. I think there's still another level to his game offensively. Like I wonder if he can get to 25 goals, maybe 50 points. That could be a little bit much to ask for next year, but I just look at it too, dude. It's like he's probably going to be their second line center, depending what they do with Elias Lindholm. I still think that Lindholm is better suited for the wing. I just don't think he can skate that well. And I think with Minton, Hagen, Zacha, you should run that as your top three. Is it a great bunch of three centers? No, but I think it has potential to be good. And especially if you've got like good wingers around you, like they can help make them better, right? So I think that Fraser Minton is going to break out a little bit more this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really have my eyes on Fraser Minton. I like James Hagens a lot, but when I just look at James Hagens, I just think that he's going to have those rookie struggles that you kind of see with rookies here and there, right? He's a bit smaller. I'm not saying he's going to have a bad season next season, but I don't think he's going to have this massive season. And I think Fraser Minton's more a guy to keep an eye on here for the Boston Bruins. Looking at their prospect pool, Mark, what grade would you give them?
Like I said earlier, I think their prospect pool like has improved quite a bit. Like over the past couple seasons, like I think they probably had one of the worst prospect pools in the NHL a couple of years ago. And obviously they were a good team at points, but their future just seemed very much in doubt. I'm going to give them a B minus. I think that they're probably hovering around maybe like the 12 to like 17 mark in accordance to prospects in the NHL. James Hagens helps that a lot, kind of boosting that with him being like a potential first line center. I would say like Letourneau could be like a second line forward playing the top six. Like Will Zellers has some upside as well. And even some of the other guys, like I didn't really mention a whole lot. Like Cooper Simpson had a really good season in the USHL. I really wonder about his upside. Like Dansloke Mellis was a fourth round pick. I didn't really expect a whole lot out of, but he's been good in the AHL. Can Matt Poitras become something? They don't really have much in net besides DiPietro, who is a little bit older right now, but I think their prospects that I mentioned for the most part like are pretty quality ones, and I think he's done a good job at replenishing that recently.
Yeah, I'm giving them a B minus as well. You look at their prospect pool, and there's at least three, if not 3 to 5 guys that you could see making an impact in the NHL, and some making a massive impact in the NHL, right? When you got a guy like James Hagens there, so I'm gonna give him a B minus. Last question for you, Mark, is overall offseason grade. What would you give them?
I think it was pretty good in accordance to like they didn't do a whole lot. They got a little bit better. I'm still gonna give them a B minus though, just because I still have question marks overall about like can this team make the playoffs? Like the centers, like you kind of are relying on youth. You know what I mean? And right now, like
Yeah.
you are going into another season where you lost Bergeron and Krejci, and that first line center is still definitely a huge question mark. So I just look at it and it's like I think if they wanted to go like all in accordance to like making the playoffs, they definitely could have done a little bit more. But I don't think by any means their offseason was bad.
Yeah, I don't think their offseason was bad, but I'm gonna give them a C plus. I just look at it and this center depth, especially in the Atlantic Division, like it does scare me a fair bit for the Boston Bruins, especially considering that we all kind of think that they overperformed a little bit last season. And you look at some of the moves that were made this offseason, I think Boston probably could have gone out there, maybe use some of these prospects, use some of these picks to go out and get a centerman, right? It's like, I'm not necessarily had to be saying it had to be like a Mason McTavish, but even a Maverick Bork, like a Maverick Bork definitely would have been interesting bringing him into this Boston Bruins lineup and seeing how he would play up the center of the ice. So I'm gonna give him a C plus just because I don't really think they improved enough to continue to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I still
Mark,
think there's definitely some sort of a question mark whether they're going to get in this year. I'm still kind of
yeah,
floating around like like honestly those wild card spots in the Eastern Conference is what I'm just really struggling with at this point. Yeah, I've got a couple questions for you as well. I mean, we've talked about it a lot, but like, do you think they are going to make the playoffs, or do you think they just like overachieved last season?
I do think they overachieved last season. It is tough to say if they'll make the playoffs or not because it's as you said, it's kind of those wild card spots that you really got to think of.
I'm more just like, if you had to figure it out right now,
Yeah,
like, would you say they're a playoff team?
I'm gonna say that they are not a playoff team next season.
Okay.
I'm just gonna bet against the field. For me, it's not even the wild card spots. It's more just that last wild card spot. Like I got Buffalo in that first wild card spot, and then it's like
It's
who's
kind of
gonna
like
finish?
Toronto, Boston,
Yeah,
Ottawa. Like, depends how you feel about Montreal too, unless you think they're a legitimate top three team in the division.
I
Like
got them top three.
Tampa, Florida, I think are going to finish top three. Like,
Yeah,
I think it might even be harder to pick who's going to finish seventh in the division, to be honest with you. Like, I think Detroit is probably going to be that last team in the Atlantic Division. But even it's like to think that like one of Boston, Toronto, Ottawa, or Montreal could be like the seventh place team in the Atlantic is kind of crazy to me right now.
it would be crazy to see Montreal down
Yeah,
there.
it's not something I really want to see whatsoever. My next question to you. Obviously, he went through the contract dispute a year ago. He had a little bit of a rough season the year before last, rebounded this past season. Would you say right now, if you ranked the goalies in the NHL, that Jeremy Swayman is within the top five goalies in the NHL?
Top five is a bit tough to say.
See,
No,
my
no, he's
opinion, I
not.
think the
He's
top
not.
four in no specific order are Hellebuck, Vasilevsky, Shesterkin, and Sorokin. I think that's, I don't know if you'd put them all in the same tier, but I think that they're on a different tier than the rest. And I was curious if you thought like Swayman could be that next guy.
You can make an argument, but I look at Logan Thompson and I really like what he's done, especially recently. Like for me, after that tier of guys, it's like you have the tier of like the Jeremy Swayman, Ottinger, Logan Thompson. There's other guys I could probably throw in that kind of little
Depending how you feel
second,
about Gustafson.
yeah, like that little secondary tier, right? Even Wallstead, right, based off how he played towards at the end of the season. But it's like, who do you take there at five, right? It's you can make an argument for each of them realistically. I'm just gonna say no, just because I would prefer Thompson.
Okay. My last question to you is a true or false question because I think that this award is actually pretty wide open this year. David Pasternak will finish with the most goals in the NHL next season. True or false?
False. Again, I'm betting on the field here, taking my
Is
odds there.
you think there's anybody that comes to mind that could lead the league?
I mean, the big two being McDavid and Draisaitl. If Matthews bounces back and he's fully healthy, like Matthews is always kind of you can't deny his goal scoring abilities, right? And then my one like sleeper pick that could lead the league in scoring next year is Dylan Gunther in the out in Utah. I
Okay.
I like him, man, as a player.
It's crazy. You didn't even mention like Caulfield, McKinnon, like the two leading scorers this year. I think it's like more open of an award than like we
Yeah.
kind of think about at times. You know what I mean?
Well, because it used to be like Ovi and it's like
Matthews for a
who,
couple of years, right?
yeah, right. Where now I think there's a lot more guys that you can kind of Like the field's a lot more open, I would say, right?
Yeah, fair enough. That was my last question for you for Boston.
Moving on to our next team, it's the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're going to go over to the Metro Division. This is a team that I think, Mark, I might have had them finishing top five for the draft based off last season, and all of a sudden they do a complete 360. They shock everybody, and not our boy Alex Pereira though, and they make the playoffs. Before we talk about that and their lineup going in next season, though, Mark, can you take me through some of their prospects? Because they have had a decent amount of picks here in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, the list I have written down, there's no way I can talk about every one of these guys,
Yeah,
or we'll be here until midnight tonight. Um, but yeah, you look at them like, I mean, I was so wrong about Ben Kindle last year. That was a really good pick overall. Will Horkoff, they took in the first round last year at 24th overall. He had a monster season for Michigan, putting up just about a point per game. Like, he seems like a guy that's probably going to be a second line center, at least in the NHL. Probably needs some more development time at Michigan, maybe even a little of a sprinkle in the AHL. But I would say probably within the next 2, at most 3 years, he's going to be a full-time NHL player. I really like his upside. Bill Zonin, they took 2 picks before him in 2025. He's a really good player as well. I think he plays with a lot of energy, a lot of pace. I more envision him as like a middle six winger who could probably put up like 40 plus points, but I think he's a player that is going to provide a lot of energy for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he'll be a nice, like, he'll fit in there quite nicely, is what
yeah,
I'm trying to say overall. You take a look at some of their other prospects overall. Harrison Brunicky had a little bit of sprinkle in the NHL last year before getting sent down. He was pretty good for the most part, I would say. I think that he can be a top 4 defenseman, probably a little bit more defensive than offensive, in my opinion. I know he looks like he can put up a lot of offensive numbers in junior. I just don't see that translating to the NHL overall. This year they took those twins, Liam and Marcus Ruck. I like them a lot. I didn't really love how the whole situation played out, though, where it was kind of like they were almost like demanding to be drafted together. Like, I don't love that, just because it's like you're committing 2 picks that are really high just based off the fact that they're twins. Look, it could turn out like 100%, right? But I don't know. Do you feel the same way, or do you think it's more like it's a cool story? And I'm not trying to like take away from that. It's just like I felt like once they picked one of them, it was like they had to pick the other one. And I don't
yeah,
love going down that route.
yeah. It kind of was like that, but I will say it's I don't. For me, more would have been tough if like they both went way earlier than they should have gone. But I just think when you look at where they won the draft, I'd say they both went kind of around where they were projected. You know what I mean?
That is a very valid
Especially the second
argument.
one.
And he didn't trade up to get him either.
Yeah, it's like once you drafted the first one, I forget the names there, but
Liam first, Marcus second.
once they drafted Liam, it's like if you're trading up to the late 20s to draft the other one, it's like, okay, then it's like, you're kind of holding them hostage. But it, I'd still say he went kind of where he would have been projected to go if his brother wasn't a factor, right? So I didn't have too many issues with it.
That's fair. I mean, this take could literally be like my Ben Kindle take and just go completely sideways. But I think it's just more like I think they're relying on like the both of them too much. Like the second
Yeah,
one, Marcus really relies on Liam a lot more than Liam relies on Marcus, I think. So that's where I'm just like worried a little bit. And it's like, are they going to always be demanding to be on the same line? Like, how is that really going to play out? Like from a coaching perspective, I
yeah.
think is
What
more the
happens if
way.
one gets called up and one doesn't even?
Yeah, exactly. What if one's really ready for the NHL before the other one is, and then you have to kind of rush both of them at the same time, and then they're spending time apart? I'm going to go through some of these other ones kind of quick because there's a couple more I want to mention. Avery
Yeah,
Hayes, undrafted player that they signed a couple of years ago. He was a monster for Pittsburgh when he got called up last year, had really good numbers in the AHL. Kind of seems more like a depth scoring piece that can provide energy. Really liked his game last season when he got called up. Owen Pickering was a first-round pick in 2022. He's a really big left-handed shooting defenseman. I think he's more going to be kind of like a bottom 4, like defensive style defenseman overall. Didn't love the pick where it was a couple years ago, but I still think there's an NHL career ahead of him. The one guy I wanted to talk about, which I don't really know what you're going to think of this, but I love Thomas Galvas. He got drafted last year as a 20-year-old. It's double overager year. I don't know if you remember him from the World Juniors on Czechia, but he was the defenseman that literally looked like Lane Hudson. He's just 5'10", dancing around out there, running the power play, great skater. I think he's going to be one of those picks where he might be in Europe for another year or so, and he could like make the team in the next year or two. Because the one thing I'll say about Pittsburgh too is there's kind of like an opportunity to take like a shot to make the team as a left-handed defenseman. Like probably not this season, but they don't have a lot of left-handed shooting prospects. Like there isn't really anyone on their team right now. Like they had Parker Wotherspoon, Ryan Shea last year. They're both gone. Right now, their projected lineup, they have 4 right-handed shooting defensemen. So I like Thomas Galvas a lot. I actually think it could be like one of the sneaky picks of this draft. And he was one of those guys where it was like, how the fuck did this guy not get drafted in his draft year? Because yeah, he got better over these last couple of years, but he was still a really good player overall. Now, I'm not done here, dude.
I know there's one guy I want to talk about, so I'm just waiting for you to bring him up.
Honestly, I was going to move over to their goalies, so if you want to bring him up, go for it.
For me, the one guy I want to talk about is Rekar McGroarty. Like, this is a guy that when he demanded it out of Winnipeg a couple of years ago, it was like, oh my God, Pittsburgh is getting this awesome prospect. And he's kind of just been in the AHL and he, like, hasn't really gotten a real shot in the NHL yet. Like, I know we talked about some guys earlier. Do you think with Rekar McGroarty, like, where is it at in his development path? And how far away are we from being like, not writing him off, but being like, okay, his time's up?
I think it's still too early to write him off. I just think the problem with him is the skating, and it's just such a concern to me that it's like I'm looking at their team this year. I feel like the last couple of years, and it's kind of like a Dubas strategy, is he gets a lot of forwards, and it's like they almost have like, you look at their roster sometimes, and it's like they almost have like 16 forwards where you're like, holy shit, like they can make the team. You know what I mean? I don't look at Rekar McGroarty as making the team at all this year. Like, I really think he's going to go back down to the AHL. He's obviously a very skilled player. I just wonder about like the actual NHL upside just because of the skating. Like, I think the jury is still out of whether he's going to be like a top 6 forward in the NHL or not. Like, I don't think it's a surefire thing despite where he was drafted.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I'm just like, I'm looking at, and a couple years ago, it was like he was one of the only kind of high tier prospects that Pittsburgh have. Where now it's like they've drafted pretty well over the last couple of years, and you're starting to look around him, and there's other very good forward prospects there. And I'm almost getting to the point with Rekar McGroarty where it's like, man, like, do you almost just have to sacrifice him to let some of these other guys like develop that you might have a higher rated prospect? It's tough to kind of judge where he's at and fully what to do with him right now. He's a tough one for me. Mark, continue with these goalie prospects though.
Yeah. The other prospects I just want to name on forward, I don't want to really go into them, but like just because of Pittsburgh fans are kind of like, why don't you talk about him? I like
Alex.
Peyton Kettles. Who? Alex, yeah. Peyton Kettles, I mean, he could be a solid bottom pairing defenseman, I think, in the future. Max Swanson's a very interesting guy to me. He's like really undersized, but really skilled. He was a 7th round pick. Zam Plant was really good in the NCAA last year as well. So there's just a couple other guys I wanted to mention where I think Pittsburgh, like not all these guys are going to hit, but it's like they've taken so many swings that I think like some of these guys will hit. So I think he's done a really good job at like replenishing the forward prospects overall, even though I maybe I don't see the same upside as maybe Dubas does. Now, Pittsburgh's another team where their goalie prospects are really intriguing to me. It seems like right now that Sergei Murashov is going to be one of their goalies next year. He was one of the best goalies in the AHL this past season, really solid for Wilkes-Barre down the stretch in the playoffs. He's very calm, very composed. Overall, just a really good goalie. I think he came over from Russia a couple years ago. He was a 4th round pick. Definitely a really solid player overall, I would say. Their other goalie prospect who spent some time in the AHL, spent some time in the NHL, not last year, but the year before, was Joel Blomqvist. He was actually picked with the draft pick they got for Matt Murray when they traded him to Ottawa. Like, you look at him as well, dude, and it's like, He wasn't even the starting goalie in the AHL. He's already had NHL experience. He's still putting up like
Yeah.
913 save percentage in the AHL. Like, he's 2 years older than Murashov, but he's only 24 years old. Like, he could be an option for Pittsburgh down the road. And then the final goalie prospect is Gabriel Dagile. I don't know if I'm saying his name properly. Dude, I was seeing clips of this kid when he was 15 years old. He's from Quebec. He trains with Fleury in the summer. Like, the problem with him was when he actually got to the queue, he's been playing for Victoriaville for a couple of years, and they've been brutal. Like, where the point is, you look at his hockey DB and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like 870 save percentage. And I think it was a product of being on a bad team. And you look at his numbers this year, like, he's 14, 21, and 3 with a 908 save percentage and a 3.58 goals against average. Like, look how many shots he's facing a game where he's letting in 3.5 goals a game, but he's still putting up a 908 save percentage. I think there's a future there for him. I don't think it's a starting goal in the NHL, but I think you give him 4 to 5 years, and if he continues to develop at a solid path, he could be an NHL goalie.
Yeah, for me, Pittsburgh's prospects are definitely interesting because even their goalie prospects, right? It's like they maybe don't have that like top tier goalie prospect, but it's similar to their forwards. They got a lot of tickets and options there, right? For when you look at prospects in the NHL, a lot of the time it's kind of just lottery tickets. And to me, Pittsburgh, they got a decent amount of those right now.
I would honestly say, dude, that I think Sergei Murashov could be a top 20 goalie in the NHL eventually. I really do. I think he's got the fundamentals in his game, and I think it'll take some time, but I think he's going to be a starting goalie in the NHL.
Which Pittsburgh they're going to need at some point, so it's definitely going to help them out. Looking over now at their lineup, this is a team that had a decent amount of moves this offseason. And again, it was those similar sort of similar Kyle Dubas moves where it's a low risk, high reward stuff, right? Like you bring in Kuzmenko, you bring in Hendrix Lapierre. The other one is Nick Robertson, right? Like that could be very interesting. I look at this lineup, and for a team that made the playoffs and has also kind of been in this still trying to compete when you got Sade and Malkin and Letang, I think they did another great summer of moves where you bring in guys like the guys that I just mentioned, plus even some guys on their decor like Ken Korzak, right? Like that's another kind of reliable defenseman there. I would definitely look at it and say Pittsburgh got better. The one area that I do have a bit of questions though is their goaltending. They move on from Stuart Skinner, they don't bring him back, and now you're gonna have Seelovs as your starter, and this other goalie Mark that you were mentioning, he's gonna be your backup, and neither are quite proven in the NHL. They've right? Like they both had some time there, but not proven to what Stuart Skinner was. And I do wonder, like, how is that going to play out for the season? When you look at this lineup, though, Mark, how do you feel about them?
Yeah, they definitely had like quite a bit of change, I would say. Cause I
Yeah,
mean, it's expected with Dubas, especially in the situation he's in. Like, he takes a lot of risk on shorter term contracts. And I think once it becomes time to re sign guys, he's very cautious about like what he can give, like number wise, especially with like Anthony Mantha. Like, obviously, he didn't want to commit that to Ryan Shea or even Stuart Skinner. It seemed like I
yeah,
really wonder if they just wanted to give Murashov an opportunity this year, right? I think they did a pretty good job overall. The one thing that I do find strange is going the route of having like 4 right-handed defensemen, and you didn't really replace like Parker Wotherspoon and Ryan Shea had good fucking seasons last year, dude. Like Ryan Shea put up 35 points. Parker Wotherspoon was just over 25 points overall. I like the guys that came in, like Trevor Van Riemsdyk's a solid defensive defenseman. I would still say, though, that the defense isn't very strong, in my opinion. Like, they did let in a lot of goals last year. Obviously, you say, like, the goaltending isn't going to be great. Like, last year, they were a team where they scored a lot of goals, but they let in a lot of goals. Like, they were a very entertaining team for the most part, I would say, if you're watching from a viewer standpoint. And I kind of anticipate that it's going to be the same thing. Like, I really think
yeah.
that they are going to score a good amount of goals, but they're going to struggle to keep them out of their net at the same time. I was kind of going back and forth whether I do think this team is better than last year. Like, I'm very indifferent about it right now. But the points you made, they do make sense. Like he did fill some holes. Like I really wonder, you give Nick Robertson a little bit more of an opportunity than he had in Toronto. Like, how is that going to turn out overall? I think that could be pretty solid. Like, Andrei Kuzmenko, he's a very streaky player, but to bring him in for $5 million for one season, I think is a very low risk move, because at worst you can retain half of that salary and flip him at the deadline for like a mid-round draft pick if you have to.
Yep.
So I think in accordance to like the plan for Kyle Dubas, he kind of stuck to the plan. But I don't know if they're still going to be good enough to be like a top 3 team in this division, because I think if they're not, they might have troubles making the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and if they do have trouble making the playoffs this year, that's where it's the moves that Kyle Dubas made, or it still kind of works out because since there's not a whole lot of term there, and you also have a decent amount of depth, it's like you can move on from some of these guys that they're having good years, and you're not going to be making the playoffs, right? Looking at their lineup right now, outside of Koivunen, who just signed that 8-year extension, then next the guy with the longest term after him is Shinnikov at 3 years, right? Like there's not guys on this team that have a whole lot of term and that are really married to this team. So if you are having a bad year and you are going to miss the playoffs, then it's like you can probably flip some of these guys, go and get picks, go and get prospects, whatever it is, and then kind of try your hand again next summer while you still have Sid, right? So it is kind of an interesting game plan that Kyle Dubas has been doing here with Pittsburgh, and it is kind of working, I guess. Mark, I want to move on and ask you the questions now. First question is, who's going to lead this team in points?
I think especially if he stays healthy the whole year, like I don't expect any downfall from Sidney Crosby whatsoever. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he's putting up 90 points again. I mean, if he does get hurt, which I mean, I'm really hoping he doesn't, it could be a different story. I mean, he's been pretty healthy, I would say, for the most part. Like, I mean, he missed some time last year, but still a great player overall. And if he's healthy, there's no way I see anybody getting more points than him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be Sidney Crosby, and I think there's not a whole lot of real competition on this team outside of him to really lead them in points unless something goes horribly wrong. So I think Crosby's going to lead the team in points pretty significantly. Next question is who's going to be the big breakout player for them?
I still think there's another level to Nick Robertson's game, man. I really do. Like, I think especially if he does get an opportunity within the top 6, depending how they structure these lines overall. Like, we've got them set up right now where Malkin is playing the wing, which I mean, he actually did play a good amount last year. But I mean, you put him over to center, maybe there's an opportunity for Nick Robertson to jump in the top 6. I still think at some point in his career, Nick Robertson is going to be a 25 goal scorer. I don't know if that's going to be consistently, but I think maybe a new opportunity. I mean, he asked for a trade a couple of years ago. I think he could break out this year.
For me, my breakout player is Igor Shinnikov. This is a guy last season that didn't have a great start there in Columbus. Once he gets traded over in 43 games, he had 36 points, 18 and 18. He kind of did have a good second half this season, but I think if you give him a full year here in Pittsburgh, I could see him hitting the 30 goal mark and having 50-ish points somewhere around there. I think he's going to have a massive year here for Pittsburgh. Next up, Mark, looking at their prospect pool, what grade would you give them?
This was a tough one just because, like, there's so many different guys, but I don't know if you would agree with this or not. Like, they don't, it's not like they have like a full first line center or like a
Yeah.
first number one defenseman. So that made it a little bit more difficult for me. I ended up going with a B plus just because that is the part where I'm just like, even if a lot of these guys turn out in the future, but if their upside is where I think they're going to be, I still think they're going to lack some top end talent once like Malkin is gone and Sid's gone, and even like Carlson on the back end retires eventually. So I think that's where I'm just a little bit not as optimistic about their prospect pool, but I think there's so many options for guys that could play on this team within the next couple of seasons. And there are guys that could be top 4 defensemen and top 6 forwards. And maybe there will be a guy like Will Horkoff. Like, who knows? Maybe he will be like a lower tier first line center. You don't really know, right? But right now, I wouldn't say so. So I'm going to go with a B plus.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to give them a B plus. It's similar to what you mentioned. They don't have that top tier prospect right now, but they do have a lot of lottery tickets, as I mentioned earlier. And sometimes that's what you need, right? Like just because you drafted a guy fifth overall doesn't mean that he's going to pan out to be what a fifth overall pick should be. Like sometimes the guy that you drafted 55th overall turns into that, right? So I think Pittsburgh having a lot of prospects and having a lot of decent prospects where you can see them making an impact. It's like all you need is one or two of those guys to kind of go over expectations, and all of a sudden that then you do have a better prospect pool than we're even talking about now. So I'll give them a B plus. Last question mark is overall offseason grade. What are you going to give them?
I'm gonna give them a B. I think they stuck to their plan. Like they didn't really risk a lot of their future overall. Continue to sign these like short term contracts where if it doesn't work out well, it's pretty easy to move off of some of these guys. And kind of even as like you didn't commit long term to guys that'll be there like past potentially how we don't know how long Crosby's going to play overall. But I mean, it's even just like if it is a bad season overall, like they kind of do have the ability to like mix things up again next summer.
Yeah.
So I'm not super optimistic they're going to be in the playoffs next year, but I think overall the offseason was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm giving them a B. I look at their offseason and a lot of the moves I did like, and they definitely upgraded their roster in most positions. The one thing that's holding them back from me giving them a higher grade is just this question mark in goaltending. It's like if you did bring back Stuart Skinner, I'd be a lot more confident in the goaltending heading into next season. But where the goaltending's at right now, it's just unproven, right? And like it could pan out where both these guys have great seasons, but it is unproven, and we don't really know what we're gonna be getting here going into this season. Mark, before we move on to the next team, what questions do you have for me with the Penguins?
My first question for you is obviously like I think their back end and their goaltending is a little bit of a concern heading into this year. Which one of the two do you think is the bigger problem? Or
I
like
think it's
concern, I would say.
I think it's their goaltending. I look at their back end and yeah, like it is a bit of a concern, but you do have some decent players back there, right? Like Gerard Carlson, they're decent. Carlson had a better year last season. Van Riemsdyk, I do like bringing him in. The other thing too is when the season goes on, I think if Pittsburgh clearly is struggling with their decor, it is definitely going to be easier to solve those issues than it would be to solve a goaltending issue. Like we see that season in, season out. The goaltending issues, if you go into the season with a goaltending issue, it is very hard to figure that out mid-season. Where if you have an issue within your decor, it's a lot easier to go out and make a trade, make a move to kind of help with that, right? So I'd say their goaltending scares me more.
Okay, fair enough. I honestly think their defense is a bigger concern. I look at their defense and I don't know if you agree with me, but I would say right now I can only confidently say that Erik Karlsson is the only top four defenseman on their team. Like I think if you put all these other guys on different teams, maybe some of them will be like number five
Yeah.
guys, but I don't really think Sam Girard is much of a top four defenseman anymore. I think Trevor Van Riemsdyk's a solid number five guy. Caden Korzak can definitely develop into that. I think Chris Letang is best years are way behind them at this point. I think their defense is a huge concern. I completely agree with what you're saying about kind of addressing the problem mid-season, but I think that their defense is a massive concern right now, and I think that they lost two pretty good defensemen last season in Ryan Shea and
Yeah.
Parker Weatherspoon. My next question for you is obviously like there's some young players here. There is some veterans on this team. Which player on this team do you think has the most to prove this season?
Hmm. It's a tough one, man.
Because you could go down so many routes. Like you could say, is it Evgeny Malkin in his last potential season in the NHL? Like, is it one of these young guys, like you said, like Rucker McGroarty, or like maybe it's Artur Seelobs because you think the goaltending isn't that good?
To be honest, I do think it's McGroarty, but like you don't think he's going to make the team. I don't think he's going to be on the team either to start the season. So I'm going to say somebody other than him. For me, I look at Rickard Rakell, and this is a guy that I feel like his whole career, he has one really good year, then he follows it up with like a underwhelming year. And then he has another really good year, and then he has kind of an underwhelming year. And he like it's a contract year for him, right? And the way the cap's going up, like this is a guy that's probably gonna want to get a decent payday. So I'd say he has the most to prove on this Pittsburgh Penguins team.
The other guy I really wonder about too is Billy Koivunen, dude. Like he just got a massive
Yeah.
contract despite what he's produced in the NHL. So there's going to be a lot of eyes on him. Like he gets off to a little bit of a slow start. It's going to be kind of like what's Kyle Dubas doing here. And I mean, he was a pretty big piece of that Jake Gensel trade to Carolina. So I really do think that Billy Koivunen's got a lot to prove this season in the NHL.
Yeah,
My
that's another good pick.
Yeah. My last one here for Pittsburgh. I mean, there's been rumors this summer, and I feel like it's not unexpected that Sidney Crosby is looking to re-sign with the Penguins. He's going into the last year of his deal, and it doesn't seem like he's going to slow down at all. But my question for you is, there's been a lot of rumors about this guy getting traded over the past couple of years. They've been kind of settled down recently, but you think Erik Karlsson is going to be a Penguin in the 27-28 season?
That's a good one. It's tough because I don't think Pittsburgh's going to trade him necessarily. Just with a cap hit of being 10 mil, it's like it makes it a bit tough to trade him. I'm going to say that he will not be a Pittsburgh Penguin.
I do agree with that, to be honest. I think that the contract, especially the way Dubas has been like negotiating with this team, I don't know if he's gonna want to go down that route.
Yeah.
And plus Letang will still be like under contract too. Like he's getting older. I know it's only 2 years left at this point, but fuck, what is he, 39, 40 at this point? And that has really gone downhill as well, right? But on the other hand, it's like, say they don't make the playoffs. Like say their season goes okay, but they just miss the playoffs, right? Like say they end up like say Washington, maybe not as good like league standing wise, but like maybe a couple points out is where I'm trying to go with this. Like
Yeah.
they don't make many moves throughout the year. Like they're kind of in the hunt to make the playoffs, so they don't trade guys away. Like I said, like if you don't trade Erik Karlsson, like what the fuck is your defense going to look like next year?
Yeah.
That's just the other
Would have
side
to
of
do
it,
a
right?
lot.
That's the other side of it. It's like he's gonna have to kind of rejuvenate this decor without Erik Karlsson. So I think it's like still somewhat up in the air. I right now I would say like I'm like 65% no, 35% yes that he's coming back. But I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah. I just look at it and I think for Carlson, like I could see him going out and testing UFA, especially considering that he hasn't won a cup yet and he's really going to probably want to win a cup and be on a competitive team. It's like if Pittsburgh isn't making the playoffs this season, I could see Carlson either getting traded or just going to UFA and being like, hey, I have a chance to pick where I can go here, right? I'm going to move on now and talk about the last team for today's podcast. We're going to do the third Atlantic Division team. It is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Mark, this is a team that has traded a bunch of picks and a bunch of prospects over the span of the last 5 to 10 years. So, can you take me through their very limited prospect pool?
Yeah, I mean they've been going for it for quite some time here, and they haven't had a whole lot to work with in accordance to prospects coming up. But the one thing I will say, it's a lot different from them and other teams is like they do a good job of getting guys into their system and developing them and
Yeah.
bringing them up to the NHL when you don't think that they really have anything within their system. So that's the one thing I will say that makes me more optimistic about the Tampa Bay Lightning is maybe in a couple of years some of these guys you don't think that really have much of a future in the NHL could have a future in the NHL. Their best prospect, in my opinion, that we are familiar with is Sam O'Reilly. Just an absolute dog in the OHL. Playoff MVP, regular season MVP, Memorial Cup MVP. Really solid two-way player that can also put up offense at the same time. I don't know if there's anything else you really want to add about him. I know we've seen him so much, but I think that's like the best way to describe Sam O'Reilly, to be honest. It's just like he does a
Yeah.
little bit of everything, but it's like there's also offensive upside there at the same time where it's like I don't think he's limited to being a third line center in the future. Do you agree? Would you agree with that for the most part?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He had a really good season this year between London and Kitchener, and of course, went on to win the Memorial Cup. And the thing I'd say with this guy too is it's not only the on ice stuff that he has, like this guy's a winner. This guy knows what it takes to win. You look at his junior career and he's won everything. I think he's won 3 Memorial Cups. Three o
Three straight OHL championships, two straight Memorial Cups. He lost in the finals of one of them. The 3 straight Memorial Cup appearances.
Right, but it's like this guy knows how to win. This guy's a leader on and off the ice. Like a lot of the stuff that you don't see in his kind of tape and his hockey DB, like he has a lot of other stuff that you look for in a prospect, right?
It's like, yeah, you look at the numbers and you see 71 points in 56 games, which is obviously really good, but there's guys in the OHL that eclipse those numbers, right? But it's like he does a little bit of everything that makes him more valuable, in my opinion. Ethan Gauthier was a second-round pick a couple years ago. He's more of like a sniper. I don't think his development path has been that great. I was kind of surprised that he dropped outside of the first round in the 2023 draft, but now I'm kind of seeing more why. Like I think he's probably going to max out at like a third line forward in the NHL. Dylan Duke's a very interesting prospect, in my opinion, because I think he's a type of player that Tampa Bay likes in accordance to he can produce points, but he's also very gritty at the same time. And I kind of envision him being like a bottom 6 forward on the Tampa Bay Lightning. He played a couple games for them last year. I think there's probably a possibility that he will be called up and play at points this year, but he had a really good season in the AHL last year, like 32 goals, 59 points. I think that the time is ticking for him to potentially be an NHL player. Connor Geekie, I mean, he's played some NHL games. He was in that Sergachev trade. I really feel like he's similar to McGroarty, where it's like the skating isn't great.
Yeah.
Geekie's a big body, but I think the time is ticking with him in accordance to being a full-time NHLer. I think he could get an opportunity out of camp. I don't necessarily have him penciled in right now. But I would honestly say, I don't know if you agree, like if he's not a consistent NHL player this year, I really see him maybe getting traded, honestly.
Time to move on.
Yeah. And then if you look at some other prospects, Jack Pridham played for Kitchener in the OHL this year as well. He was an overager who had 46 goals. I don't think the NHL upside is very high for him overall. Like I would say he's probably going to max out at like a third line scoring forward if he ends up making the NHL. But I thought it was a pretty good gamble for them to go out and get him.
Yeah.
He's going to spend a couple of years in the NCAA, but once they get him into the system, you never really know what could happen. I would say besides that, dude, like a lot of the other guys like Ethan Zada, like Joanna Saralainen probably look like guys that could be like a fourth line center or something like that. But the one thing with Tampa, like I said, it's like, I don't want to discredit like any of these prospects. Like, it's just like, they could be 23 and you think they're going to be nothing. And then it's like, you get like a Darren Radish and like a Ross Colton and like some of these guys, like a Dominic James, Dominic James, it was like he was drafted by Chicago. They didn't sign him and he signs with Tampa. And he was really good in that Montreal series last year. Right. So, and like another guy too is even Gage Goncalves. Like, you know what? There's so many guys for Tampa Bay where it's just like, you never know what they could be, right? Like you can't really write them off even at 24 years old.
Yeah, for me, this prospect pool, like it's not unbelievable, but considering how Tampa's kind of been operating, their prospect pool is definitely better than what you would expect. Just given the fact that Tampa has had hardly any picks and traded a lot of their prospects over the last couple of years, it's like you wouldn't really expect the prospect pool to maybe look like what Tampa's looks like, right?
And like
Moving
the other
on,
guy too, sorry, so the other guy
go
too,
ahead.
like a lot of people was like undercover last year. Like, buddy, Charles Edward Dastu had 25 points as a defenseman last year. Like, did we even know who the hell he was a couple of years ago? Like,
God,
that's
no.
another guy. Like, Pittsburgh just signed Declan Carlisle. He played for Tampa Bay last year too. He came up from the AHL. So it's like there's so many guys that they just plug into their system that become NHLers eventually.
I want to move on now and look at their lineup for going into next season. This is a lineup that, once again, it's going to be favorites to win the Atlantic Division. They made a decent amount of moves this offseason. Big ones being bringing in John Carlson on the D-core. They also bring in a backup goalie in Dennis Hildeby. You lose out, though, on some big pieces, right? You lose out on Darren Radish, who is unbelievable for them last season, run their first power play, had a career high in in points. Nick Paul, he gets traded out. You lose Oliver Bjorkstrand. Corey Perry, of course, he's gone again. Looking at this lineup, Mark, how are you feeling about them going into next season?
I think overall, like it's pretty good. I think ideally, like they would have wanted to get like another top six forward in there.
Yeah,
But the one thing I will say, it's like their top six is so talented besides that sometimes you can plug in a guy that might not necessarily be a top six guy and can play at that level. Like that was kind of the player I thought Oliver Bjorkstrand was. Like you see glimpses of his career where he's scoring 20, 25 goals. Like you think he's probably a top six forward because of how good he plays defensively as well. For some reason, that just did not work out with Tampa Bay at all. Like Gage Gun Calves is a guy that I think could take a step this year. Maybe he can fit in that top six and put up 40 points. Like, can that be Ilya Mikheyev? Like, maybe. Like, I don't know. Like, would you really be shocked if Ilya Mikheyev had 20 goals and close to 50 points this year? Like, I
not
wouldn't be
overly,
shocked
no.
at all, right? So I think that would probably be something they'd want to address. I feel like cap space is definitely probably hindering them a little bit from making that move, and obviously probably like the assets they have as well without having to like subtract guys from their roster. But yeah, I think it's a really good team. Like, yeah, and losing Nick Paul, not great. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think they traded Nick Paul because they got a really solid young goalie out of it, and they think Sam O'Reilly is ready to be their third line center next year. I really think that he is going to
Yeah,
make the team out of camp and be really good next year. And it's like, even if he's not, like, he can probably put Yanni Gord there and you'll be fine. Like, he's a guy that has so much experience in the NHL. I think it'd be a luxury if he's your fourth line center this year. A lot of people hated on like the Jeff VL signing. He was a fucking monster for Anaheim in the playoffs last year. Like, he shut down McDavid for a little bit. He's very physical. He put up some numbers near the end of the season. And I think if you're looking at that contract in like a year or two, like that's basically like going to be fucking league minimum. Like, I know it's 5-year deal, but it's like, I don't really see the
yeah,
huge
two
risk
and a
in it.
half is nothing.
Like, he was a guy that I was looking, I was like, man, Montreal could fucking snag him if he's not going to be making too much money. So I like that overall. I mentioned Dominic James. I think he'll probably play consistently within probably their top nine, but I agree with you. I think they're probably going to compete for the division. Losing Darren Radish sucks, but John Carlson, I mean, he's a pretty good replacement overall. You're going to hope Victor Hedman's healthy this season. That'll help out as well. And I think Vasilevsky and Hildeby is debatably the best tandem in the NHL next season.
Yep. Yeah, this is a team on paper that looks like they're definitely going to be making the playoffs, finishing top three in that Atlantic division, even competing for that top spot. Mark, moving on, I want to ask you who's going to lead this team in points.
I don't even think we need to think twice about it being Nikita Kucherov, to be quite honest with you. I think
Yeah,
that's all I really got to say.
can't even add anything onto that. Next question is who's going to be a breakout player for them?
I really wonder about opportunity. Like I said in the top six, I really like Gage Goncalves' game, dude. I wonder if there's an opportunity for him to maybe put 15 goals, 40 points. Because the one thing, like I said, like there is going to be an opportunity for these guys that are hovering in the bottom six to play in the top six with some pretty quality players. Like you might be playing with Anthony Cirelli and Brandon Hagel on the second line. Like there's going to be an opportunity for you to put up some good numbers. I think Gage Goncalves is a guy that has paid his dues in the AHL. He's fast. He's got skill. A lot of people don't really know a lot about him, but right now I've got him penciled in the top six, and I think he's going to have a good season.
I really got my eyes on Sam O'Reilly. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to go and he's going to be playing third line center next year for them, and he's really just going to show why he was such a good juniors player, right? To me, like we're talking about Sam O'Reilly earlier, and we're saying, yeah, like his numbers, if you're just looking on paper, maybe you don't get the hype. But when I look at Sam O'Reilly, there's definitely a lot of similarities there to the guy that's playing ahead of him in the lineup, Anthony Cirelli, right? Like both these guys can play power play, they can put up points, they can play penalty kill, they're reliable defensively, right? Like I think you're going to see Sam O'Reilly playing that third line centerman role next season and really see what his game's all about. Next question for you, Mark. Prospect pool. Looking at it, what would you give them as a grade?
Even though, like I said, I think that we probably can't sleep on a lot of these prospects, especially now, because like some of them could make an impact, maybe even like 3 to 4 years down the line. If I'm looking at it right now and kind of taking that out of it, like it's like a D plus. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing really that special here besides like a Sam O'Reilly overall. Like I don't even think any of their goalies are really kind of future NHL goalies. And to be honest, I'm taking Dennis Hill to be completely out of that. I'm not really considering him a prospect in this because my goalie prospect threshold's about like 15 to 20 games, I would say, and he's already hit that mark. So I wouldn't consider him in that. I think he's just going to be their backup goalie next year and had some good NHL experience last year. So their only good quality prospect right now, in my opinion, is Sam O'Reilly.
Yeah, I'm giving him a D plus as well. Sam O'Reilly's their one quality prospect, but I will say they do have a couple interesting guys. Like Jack Pridham to me, he seems somewhat interesting, right? Like you mentioned Dylan Duke, he seems interesting. Both those guys potentially could be NHLers at some point in their career, but at the end of the day, Tampa just doesn't have true top end quality guys, and they also don't really have a whole lot of guys that could even have an NHL impact. So D plus is the grade. Last question mark is off season grade. What would you give them?
I'll give them a B plus. I think especially once you lose Darren Radish, you replace him with John Carlson on like a shorter term deal as well. I think that's a really solid grab, even though it might look like a little bit of a downgrade overall. Um, you get a really solid young goalie. I know goaltending isn't really your issue at all, but the fact that he's basically on like an entry level contract or his second contract where he's not even making $1 million, I think that's great to get that in there for 2 years. I think it made Nick Paul expendable just having Sam O'Reilly. You kind of got some physicality in there with Jeff Viel in the bottom six, and you got some speed with Ilya Mikheyev as well, right? Like I still think that Ilya Mikheyev can be a solid player. Like I don't think there's like a massive upside there, but I think Ilya Mikheyev could get back to being like a 40 plus point player in the NHL. So I think Tampa overall, like they had a really good offseason.
Yeah, I'm gonna give them a B plus as well, considering you lost your arguably number one defenseman, number two defenseman in Radish. Like you did a very good job replacing him, going out getting Carlson. You mentioned Hildeby. I really like that. Yeah, maybe they are missing out on a top six winger, but as you mentioned earlier, when you look at the other wingers that they have in their top six, it's like you can kind of afford not to have all six of them be absolutely unbelievable. I'm gonna give them a B plus. I do think they had an off season that's gonna continue to keep them competitive. Mark, what questions do you have for me?
My first one for Tampa. Obviously, they had a pretty good season last year, but Braden Point did not at all. Do you think this season he can return to like being an elite player?
Yeah, I think he can return to being an elite player. When you look at the guys he's gonna be playing with, he's gonna be playing with a lot of talent there. And the other thing too is like Braden Point, he's not notorious throughout his career for having down years. Like I feel like last season was the first season where it was like, oh wow, he really didn't look great. So it's not like there's a history there of him underperforming, right? So I'm gonna say he's gonna be able to return.
Yeah, that's completely fair. I think he was kind of dealing with a little like undercover injury too that he was
Yeah.
sort of playing through at some points. But honestly, like that Habs series, he was pretty invisible. It was kind of surprising. Um, Now, obviously, like we're pretty optimistic about Tampa overall, but I would say like we've been pretty optimistic about Tampa like since they've won the cup. So my question is, do you think that Tampa's got at least one more deep playoff run left with this core?
Yeah, I think they could. And a lot of the reason I say that too is just their goaltender net. Having Vasilevsky there like definitely helps out. But I think if they're able to make the right moves, and also if Sam O'Reilly's able to be what we think Sam O'Reilly can be, like that's going to help out a lot with the centerman depth. I think Tampa has a very good blueprint here to go on another deep playoff run.
Now, if there are a first round exit this year, like could you see the core being like a little bit shaken up? Or do you think they'd just kind of run it back and just like tinker with the other pieces?
I think it'd be one of those things where you tinker with the other pieces. If they hadn't won a cup and been on deep playoff runs, then it's a bit different for me. But like we've seen what this core can do, right? So I think it's more of a tinker with the other pieces type of thing.
That's completely fair. My last question for Tampa Bay, people are talking about extensions next summer, whether it's Quinn Hughes, Kale McCarr, some of these other guys. What do you think Nikita Kucherov's next contract's going to look like? Because he's not getting talked about of being a UFA next summer at all.
How old is he going to be? 34, 35?
I'm going to double check right now. If I think he's 33 right now. 33 right now, born June 17th. So he'll be 34 technically when the next contract kicks in.
I think he's going to sign a 3-year deal. And call me crazy, but he's either going to sign for something ridiculous like the 15 to 18 million dollar AAV, or he's going to sign for like 12 million AAV, and we're all going to be like, oh man, he took a massive discount.
Do you have any Brisebois has been very tough negotiating. Like, do you think there's a possibility where he's like not there at all? Or do you think this is just like number one priority, one of the best players in the league? Like, you got to get it done.
You got to get it done. Because if you don't get it done, then it's like you look at this team and you're like, man, like they did take a.
That's how you shake your core up.
Yeah, like that's how you shake your core up. And you also don't have a replacement there for him. Like, how are you replacing a Hart candidate?
Well, you go out and you just get McDavid, I guess.
But if that happens,
I'm saying that like it's so easy. My prediction, I think that even at 34, I wonder if they give him like a 5-year deal with a lower AAV. Like they tried to do that with Stamkos. I was thinking like maybe like 5 times 14 or something, like 5 times 13 and a half. Like I just think that Kucherov, it's like, I still think he's going to be a great player when he's like 38. Because I don't think his game is built off of like a lot of speed, right? Like he controls the pace of play, right? And I still think that even at 39 years old, like maybe he's not putting up 135 points, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's still like a 105-point player at 38 years old, to be quite honest.
For me, it's also just tough to judge the Kucherov contract just because it's like, you have the whole Tampa factor, the no state tax stuff. It's like, I don't know, Kucherov's like, he's won a lot of cups. He's been there forever. It's like, I could see him taking a massive discount and kind of doing what McDavid did, where it's like, we all think he's going to be getting paid so much. And then it's like, oh, wow, like he really took a way undervalue.
Yeah. That's it for me.
Overall, that's going to wrap up today's episode. We're going to be back next week doing 4 more teams. We're, 2 weeks away, I think, from getting to the Final Four mark. So we're going to be there in no time. So stay tuned for all of that. But for everybody listening in right now, thanks for tuning in.